Good morning. This is Attorney Karen Jimeno. A key figure of 1Sambayan will talk about the impeachment and other issues here at the forefront. As a key figure of 1Sambayan, Attorney Howard Calleja speaks as a voice of opposition coalition, and he'll be explaining the legal and moral grounds for pushing the impeachment forward and supporting the ICC process. Will his argument be enough to overcome the political and online machinery rallying behind the Dutertes? With us this morning is a convener of 1Sambayan, Attorney Howard Calleja. Good morning, Attorney Howie.
Good morning, Karen, and good morning to all of your viewers and listeners. Good morning po sa inyong lahat.
Well, first let's start with the recent issues relating to the impeachment. Did you expect what happened in the Senate when they remanded the articles of impeachment back to Congress?
Well, remember, Karen, Isang Bayan has been very vocal from the very start since February 5, since the impeachment articles have been brought to the Senate, that ang ano namin talaga dyan, forthwith ang hearing, no, according to the Constitution, and we're saying the delay up to June is really not allowed. However, sabi ko nga, nandito na tayo, June, actually magjo-July na. So we were surprised nung June 2, minove nila ng June 11, another delay. And then, of course, we were looking at, there were already rumors that there would be filing a dismissal. So we were actually preparing already a certiorari to the Supreme Court if they will really dismiss this impeachment. Kasi nga, sabi nga natin, hindi pwede yan. And although the Senate is, let's say, is supreme with regards to rules of impeachment, hindi naman sila overpowering, hindi naman sila ang kumbaga final say there, because if there is abuse of discretion, alam naman natin, we can go to the Supreme Court for checks and balance also, and that the supreme law is not the Senate but actually the Constitution. So yung kanilang pag-remand sa House, well, it's one step better than dismissal. However, we feel it's still unconstitutional and illegal. And we are actually glad that actually the House just submitted a certification. So hopefully that finishes the issue. But secondly, there is a second proviso in that resolution or that order from the Senate to the House, is that that the 20th Congress be ready for the impeachment. So technically, the Senate already recognized the crossover from the 19th to the 20th Congress. So tingin ko that issue should already come to rest, and we just should start trial as soon as possible come 20th Congress.
Well, Senate President Cheese Escudero said that if there are people who have questions on the legality of the remand order, they're free to go to the Supreme Court. Is that something that you are also exploring as a remedy?
Well, as a lawyer, Karen, we know it is illegal. However, we also know how to manage cases. If we go to the Supreme Court, tatagal pa yan. However, as I said, we are glad that the House already certified it. So I think there's no reason to go to the Supreme Court because it would only prolong the process. And since they already certified, the House certified it, we think that, as I said, the crossover to the 20th Congress is already clear, even in the statement of the Senate and in their resolution. So I think going to the Supreme Court will only delay it further. So we just hope that the certification is enough, and the readiness of the House to cross over to the 20th Congress is enough to start the hearing come July.
Well, you mentioned earlier that at the end of the day, the Supreme Court is the final arbiter with respect to questions of law, and it's not the Senate. There's a pending petition in the Supreme Court on the possible violation of the one-year bar rule, given that there were 4 articles of impeachment filed in the House of Representatives, and that issue has not yet been decided. What is your stance, 1Sambayan stance, with respect to that petition? Are you worried that should the Supreme Court uphold that petition for certiorari, that this might be a problem for the impeachment trial to proceed?
We are not worried about that. Number one, we feel that 1 year bar for the impeachment has not been violated. We studied it very carefully, the acts of the House, and the fourth impeachment was the one referred to the Committee on Rules. The others did not. It's not kumbaga, it did not trigger the 1 year impeachment bar rule. And then also previous jurisprudence would also be clear that it's not really the actual filing, but what the House really did. So in this case, it was only the fourth impeachment pleading or complaint that was acted upon. So we feel that that was not violated. And with the certification, again, from the House that it is not violated, I mean, you have more than 200 signatures saying that the articles of impeachment is valid. So with the rule on regularity of government actions, so I think we feel very confident on that ground, Karen. And also, we would just like to remind, even si Senate President Cheese, sinabi nga niya na any questions with regards to the constitutionality, bring to the Supreme Court. So my question to Senator Cheese, bakit nag-decide yung Senate to remand? Kasi dapat, inantay na lang nila because alam naman natin, they are a court, they already convened, walang TRO to stop their proceedings, bakit nila remand? If it was true, he believes in his own statement that the Supreme Court is the final arbiter for constitutional issues such in this case, whether or not the impeachment bar rule has been violated, then they should have just proceeded with trial and just waited for the Supreme Court, whether there was a TRO or not, which in this case wala, or whatever decision of the Supreme Court is, because there is nothing stopping them from proceeding with the trial immediately or forthwith.
Attorney Calleja, just yesterday, Congressman Paulo Pulong Duterte had a video message, but he also slammed 1Sambayan for their statement on warning against other countries that would agree to take former President Duterte should his request for an interim release be granted. Ano po ba yung naging statement ng 1Sambayan in relation to former President Duterte's request for an interim release?
Well, let's just be clear, no? Just a background. Yung interim release, parang bail yan dito sa atin, parang piyansa. So that is part of the rules and procedures in the ICC. However, ang sinasabi natin, as far as I know, wala pang binigyan ng interim release as far as crimes against humanity is concerned. So isang bayan is reminding the ICC and other nations that, President Duterte or ex-President Duterte has been charged with high crimes, crimes against humanity. Ito yung pagpapatay, yung EJK niya and everything. So this is not something serious. This is very serious and not something lightly to be taken into. That's why we ask the ICC to consider not approving this request for interim release, and if ever this would be the first time, as I recall, for interim release, no? Kasi nga yung interim release before is not for high crimes, not for crimes against humanities, but smaller crimes in the ICC, mga obstruction of justice, if I recall right, but not high crimes like crimes against humanity. And we are reminding the other states or other nations, what message are they sending if they do accept, for example, na grant, inaccept nila si ex-President Duterte, what message are they sending? They are cuddling a criminal, they are cuddling a human rights violator. Is that what the country that would be cuddling ex-President Duterte wants to be remembered in the international community? That they permit human rights violation, extrajudicial killings, and take into their cudgels a person who has been accused of this heinous or high crimes against humanity.
Well, Attorney Kaufman said in a statement that at least one of the states that have expressed willingness to accept former President Duterte should an interim release be granted by the ICC, said that they will do so under very strict conditions and without any permit to travel. So is that coddling if it's allowed under the ICC rules for a state to really to have a receiving state for anyone that's been granted interim release? Because
Yeah.
this is still something that, in a sense, would be taking into custody a person who's still undergoing trial.
Yes, we feel that it's still cuddling a international criminal, a criminal against human rights, or, against humanity. Kaya nga ang sinasabi namin, kahit, well, we have to remember, Karen, only member states of ICC is allowed to get this individual should ICC allow the interim release, no? So ang sinasabi namin, kahit sabi, at doon din sa statement namin, kahit na sabihin mo pang strict rules or hindi siya gagamit ng any online or any facility, ang sinasabi namin, maniniwala ba tayo kay President Duterte? Lahat nung sinabi niya, hindi naman totoo. Simula doon sa jet ski, sabi niya, joke. Nung COVID, ang dami niyang sinabing hindi tama. You know, I mean, sinabi niya na meron daw siyang pinatay. At, you know, it is very clear, Karen, even in the Senate, under oath, President Duterte admitted that he has a death squad, that he killed individuals. No, ginagawa pa nga niyang joke ito, katatawanan. No, so ang sinasabi ko, would any country or any nation state allow itself to be known to be cuddling in a person that admitted that he has a death squad, that he actually ordered all of these things to happen in
Pero
his
para sa
countries?
inyo po ba hindi consideration yung age ni former President Duterte as an 80-year-old and the state of his health?
Well, yung age, if you look at ICC records, Karen, ex-President Duterte is not the oldest criminal or person detained or was detained in the ICC. And ginawa rin itong, they also asked for provisional liberty because of age. Hindi rin pinayagan ito ng ICC. So what makes ex-President Duterte so special? So yun ang ano namin, yun ang sinasabi namin na the record shows it has this interim release has been requested by a number of detained individuals, even older than President Duterte, but denied because their crime is a high crime and crimes against humanities. And we recall that the only time this has been granted yung mga lower crimes, yung mga obstruction of justice, but not crimes against humanity or crimes against human rights,
Well,
which
Attorney,
sabi nga natin,
yeah.
very heinous or high crimes.
Yeah. Attorney Howie, Congressman Pulong Duterte said in a statement yesterday that 1Sambayan is a group funded by Tambangag using taxpayers' money to fuel his twisted dream that he can still be president in 2028. Ano po yung response you to that comment as someone who's a convener of 1Sambayan?
Ang tanong ko, who says that? At saka, hindi ko alam, Karen, ano ba yung tambangag? Sino ba yon?
I think it's a combination. According to some of the articles, combination daw siya ng tambaluslos and bangag. I think it refers to Speaker Martin Romualdez and President Bongbong Marcos.
I can safely say, Karen, with a straight face that neither we have not talked, we have no conversation with Speaker Martin or President Marcos, and more so, does any of them or any related to them directly or indirectly fund Isang Bayan? The funding of Isang Bayan or wherever we get our funds come from our volunteers, come from our numerous chapters, both anywhere in the Philippines that have helped us. And kung wala, alam mo naman, Karen, di bunot sariling bulsa ang pondo ng Isang Bayan. So this is highly libelous. And if he can prove it, I challenge, sino ba yan? Anong pangalan yan? I don't even know
Congressman Paulo Duterte, ikaw no?
who he, di ba?
Yeah.
Who he.
But
I challenge
Attorney
him,
Howie, sino nga
to
po ba? Oo.
put his mouth, as word his mouth is, na kung totoo yan, di patunayan niya because I challenge him in any debate, in any place to prove it because I will prove him wrong.
Okay.
Dead wrong.
So sino po ba talaga ang mga tao behind Isang Sambayan or 1Sambayan?
Well, we are a group of convenors, no? Of course, headed by our chair convenor, si Justice Tony Carpio, and then of course, former ombudsman, former Supreme Court Justice, also Justice Chit Morales. Kasama din natin si COA Commissioner Heidi Mendoza, sayang hindi nanalong senador. Meron din tayo former Deputy BSP Governor Diwa Ginugundo, and a lot of other people, no, from all spectrum, because Isang Bayan is composed of groups and individuals from both the left, the center, and the right. So we are here, kaya ang Isang Bayan, we are uniting all the forces for the good of the Philippines and for the progress and development of pure and true democracy in our country.
Attorney Howie, yung Isang Sambayan also filed several petitions in the Supreme Court that are still pending up to now. But one of them na pinaka-advanced in terms of progressing in the Supreme Court is the petition filed against the transfer of the PhilHealth funds. The oral arguments were concluded last April this year, 2025. Ano na po yung status nitong petition filed against that transfer of PhilHealth funds?
Yeah. Thank you for that, Karen. No, we would just like to remind na yun na nga, when we filed the petition for the PhilHealth, we were successful also to get the TRO. So, imbes na 90 billion something or almost 100 billion yung na-release, na-stop natin yung more than 30 billion na i-release pa sana on the third tranche. Given that, sabi mo nga, nagkaroon ng oral arguments natapos nitong April, and we are waiting the decision. And we are very hopeful with what happened, with the experience, with the oral arguments and what we heard there. And we're very hopeful na maybe in a month or two, and hopefully sooner, we would find or we would get the resolution in our favor.
And another petition that's also pending in the Supreme Court is a petition relating to confidential funds na final din po ng Isang Sambayan. Can you tell us about this petition?
Yeah, because ito yung Mary Grace Piatos na mga confidential funds ni Sara Duterte na sinasabi natin itong
Okay, I think there's something wrong with our technical. We lost Attorney Howie Calleja. Let's try to bring him back, but for now, let's take a short break. At the Forefront, we'll be right back. Welcome back at the Forefront. And we still have with us 1Sambayan convener, Attorney Howard Calleja. Attorney Howie.
Yes, good morning again, Attorney Karen. Sorry na putol tayo. Baka pinuputol na tayo ni Congressman Pulong dahil sina-challenge ko na siya. Kasi kung di niya mapatunayan, ang gusto ko sabihin sana sa kanya, kung di niya mapatunayan na we are funded by kung sino man yung ina-allege niya, di dapat mag-resign na lang siya o sumama na siya doon sa dahig, sa tatay niya. Pwede na sila magsama doon.
Talaga naman, Attorney Howie. Well, I hope that actually na mapag-usapan niyo to ni Congressman Pulong at maayos ninyo. So let's talk about that petition with respect to the confidential funds that Isang Sambayan filed in the Supreme Court.
Yes, yun nga. Ang sabi ko, we are saying that although confidential funds are allowed, it should be limited only to individuals who really need confidential and intelligence funds, except, for example, the intelligence agencies or the military, let's say the president being the president. But the vice president really does not need confidential funds, or if ever man, siguro limited lang. Second, doon sa Freedom of Information Bill, remember that was done during the time of President Duterte, in-exempt niya dito yung auditing ng confidential funds, hindi daw dapat sa publiko ito o release. At sinasabi, they're saying itong COA circular. So sinasabi namin, nothing in the COA circular says it is exempt. Actually, the COA circular says it should be part of the audit, although of course may mga limitations onto the audit, but not exempt from audit. So these things we are we brought to the Supreme Court, questioning really the EO of the president, kasi nga it started by us asking for information from the office of the vice president, and ang ginawang reason ni Vice President Sara at that time is that she is barred, or the confidential fund cannot be released because of this executive order of his father. So we're questioning that, saying that is illegal and that is unconstitutional. So yung confidential funds with regards to the release or to the publication of which it should be made to the Filipino people or to the public.
Okay, so the effect of that petition, should it be granted by the Supreme Court, would be, is it to render executive orders unconstitutional with respect to allowing confidential funds for certain agencies or offices that don't really require confidential funds, and to also put it under the coverage of the freedom of information in terms of the public being able to request information?
Precisely, Attorney Karen, na sabi nga namin na although there should be strict rules into the audit, it should still be public. It is not exempt. So yun ho ang hopefully natin na magiging kalabasan ng petition na yon. Plus, nga to limit sino ba talaga ang pwedeng bigyan lang ng confidential funds. Hindi naman ito just for anybody else. At saka dumadami kasi yung LGUs na may confidential funds. Imagine, nakita namin yung LGU na Davao City has almost 400 or 500 billion as confidential funds. Imagine saan naman nila gagamitin yun?
Is that million, 400, 500 million, not billion?
Million, yes, sorry, million. And then mas malaki pa sa Manila, Quezon City, Makati, which only has a few million of confidential funds. Paano na kung susundin to lang lahat ng LGU? Plus, as I said, hindi naman hotbed ang Davao to get that confidential funds, no? So sinasabi natin na this has to be limited in giving, and also there has to be public disclosure of these confidential funds.
But with respect to the ability to get information about confidential funds, won't that compromise yung mga sources that really are in danger if they are disclosed publicly?
Well, ganito yan, Karen. No? Ang proseso niyan is talagang, for example, yung sinasabi Mary Grace Piatos, kung meron man Mary Grace Piatos ba yan, merong another file or another folder that relates sino ba si Mary Grace Piatos, and that can be made secret or confidential only among those that are checking it. For example, pwedeng i-audit yan ng let's say COA nga or whoever we appoint, no, na check ba niya totoo ba si Mary Grace Piatos, pero of course that will not be made public yung kung sino man yung taong yon. That's why I said it is very strict on how it is done, but it is not impossible to audit or make public certain provisions or certain areas of that confidential or intelligence funds.
Okay, and this applies to everyone, like for even LGUs that have confidential funds?
Yes, even the president should be subject to this. And sinasabi nga na, ba't hindi mo sinecheck yung president? Alam mo, Karen, hindi kami namimili ng tao na i-check. Just so happens na under investigation now si Vice President Sara. So if they would put the president under investigation and we would have facts to support it, why not? We are here for accountability and not for personalities. We're not loyal to anybody, but loyal to the Constitution and to the country.
And there's also a pending petition that 1Sambayan filed against the 2025 General Appropriations Act or yung 2025 budget natin. Ano na po yung status nun? Because now we're entering the 20th Congress at sisimulan na naman yung proseso for the 2026 budget. Ano na po ba yung state nitong petition na final nyo, and will this prevent irregularities in the 2026 budget? Okay, I think we lost Attorney Howie again. So for now, while we try to get him back, let's take a short break at the forefront. We'll be right back. Welcome back at the forefront. And we still have with us 1Sambayan convenor, Attorney Howard Calleja. Attorney Howie.
Yes, again, good morning again, Attorney
Good morning
Karen.
again.
Sorry
Sana
po.
wala na pong tumawag sa inyo para hindi tayo maputol sa Zoom.
Mukhang ginugulo talaga tayo ni Rep. Duterte. Sige, ayusin na nga natin, pero patunayan muna niya. Otherwise, mag-resign na siya.
Okay, let's talk about the General Appropriations Act. So ngayon, we have the 20th Congress that will start in July, and the budget process will begin again for the 2026 General Appropriations Act. And kayo po, meron kayong final na petition last year questioning the 2025 budget. Ano na po yung status nitong petition na to?
Yeah, we filed that a few months ago after the budget was signed by the President and made into law. Ang ano namin dito, number one, klaro naman sa budget natin, Attorney Karen, that education should be the highest priority, the highest budget. Kung makikita mo dito, nakakatawa, for example, yung budget on, let's say, military training or education, yung parang yung military college, ilalagay nila kasama ng education. Dinamp nila lahat ng yung mga seminars, trainings ng ibang mga departments, ilalagay mo as education. Hindi gano'n ang spirit ng ating constitution. Sinasabi, education, meaning the Department of Education, yung DepEd natin, dapat siya yung highest budget natin. Hindi yung mga, kung meron kang education or training into other departments, isasama mo yon as part of that. Number one, bawal yon, unconstitutional yon. Second, sinasabi natin na yung question din natin kasi dito rin, ziniro nila yung PhilHealth. Nasa batas natin na dapat nag-allocate ang government for PhilHealth funds, no? So, ziniro rin nila dyan. So, that's part also of what we are questioning. And also, where yung mga sinasabi, yung mga AKAP, ayuda, etc. na yan, those are sa tingin namin, pork barrel funds na dapat, di ba, it was already decided previously that yung mga PDAF na yan, mga pork barrels should not be allowed. So we're saying that this is a reinvention of that. That's why we're questioning a couple of things in the GAA as unconstitutional.
Okay, so aantay po natin yung decision ng Supreme Court on this matter, but babantayan nyo rin po ba yung 2026 budget?
Of course, babantayan natin. At siguro sabihin ko lang, yung na-move kasi yung ilang oral arguments dapat dito sa GAA na to. And hopefully, matuloy na yung oral arguments para matapos na yung and ma-submit na ito for resolution. But as we know, the budget cycle for 2026 will start come 20th Congress. So babantayan naman natin ulit yan. So of course, we will lobby and go to Congress and to the Senate. I mean, to the House and to the Senate, and do our lobbying and make sure that hopefully this time they follow the Constitution properly.
At hindi naman po ba magiging moot and academic yung existing petition in the Supreme Court should the 2026 budget process already start? Because by then, baka halos tapos na rin yung budget cycle natin.
Yes, you may say it's moot in terms of disbursement of funds, but to us not moot as part of what really is the essence, spirit, and the true intention of the Constitution para hindi ho maulit ito, Attorney Karen. Alam mo naman, kung sasabihin lang muti, uulit-ulitin lang nila yan. So there would never be a decision on what really the Constitution means with regards to giving funds to the Department of Education. What really does it mean to, let's say, giving yung mga ayuda na yan? So kung pwede ba yan o hindi. So I think on those score, just for ma-sure natin or makuha natin kung ano talaga ang decision on that, I think we should finish that and have a jurisprudence that would clearly define or tell us what is really the intention of the Constitution with regards to the budget.
Okay, that's a very good point po. And finally, anti-dynasty, you also filed a petition in the Supreme Court on this. Can you tell us ano naman po itong petition na to?
Parang hindi na kami natapos, Karen, sa Supreme Court, sa kaka-file.
Suki na kayo. Ang dami nyo pong pending petitions ngayon.
Yeah, pero if you remember, again, the spirit of the Constitution, very clear yung wording that the Constitution is against anti-dynasties. However, it would be up to Congress to define or to make a law, enabling law to define what anti-dynasty is. So, nakita natin na, Attorney Karen, na since 1987, so ano na ngayon, 2025 na ngayon, almost 38 years, Congress did not do its duty. That's why we filed a mandamus, which is asking the Supreme Court to mandate the House of Representatives and the Senate or the Congress as a whole to make an anti-dynasty law once and for all, because it is stated by the Constitution that it is their duty to make this law. And klaro na nasa SK law na yan, nasa BARM law na yan, bakit hindi na natin buuin yung anti-dynasty for everybody? Why only limit into the BAR regions and to the SK law? No? So yung hinihingi natin na kung nagawa yan on those two laws, we can do it for a whole scale for everybody in the Philippines.
Oo nga, very interesting. Abangan po namin yung mangyayari sa petition na yan. At as well as with the 3 other petitions that 1Sambayan filed in the Supreme Court. Thank you so much, Attorney Howie Calleja. We hope to have you here in the studio next time.
Yes, thank you, Attorney Karen. At para hindi tayo maputol, dyan na ako sa iyo, sa tabi mo. Sa next time.
Next time,
sa studio.
opo. Thank you again, Attorney Howard
and
Calleja.
good morning to everybody. Salamat po.
Salamat. Joining us this morning is the Dean of the Manila Adventist College School of Law and Jurisprudence and former defense attorney for the impeachment of former Chief Justice Corona, Attorney Tranquil Salvador III. Good morning, Attorney Tranquil.
Good morning, Attorney Karen.
Okay, so Attorney Tranquil, I'm sure marami na naman tumatawag sa iyo for interviews because of the impeachment trial that we are now facing as a country again. So, yes. What are your comments so far? Yesterday was the first time that the defense bared who will be the defense team, and it's made up of 16 lawyers. And one of the things that were the comments nila ng public dun sa observation nila is that this is the first time na marami yung abogado because in the past daw hindi umaabot ng 16 yung defense lawyers. But based on your experience, what can you say about the composition of the defense team right now in terms of the number?
I would say that the defense team is a law firm, if you would note. It is a law firm, and my understanding is around 3 or 4 of them are not from the same law firm. So I would say that they would have some sort of a coherence already. They can work as a team, and that's the reason why they got an entire law firm. But of course, there are those other individuals who will be joining the team. Compared to the Corona team, and that would include you, we were 12. But those were the original members of the team. But as we moved along, there were other support lawyers. So I think that would have grown to as many as probably 16 or 18. But again, in the eyes of the public, there were just 12 Corona lawyers at that time.
And I agree with you. We were together in that defense team, and even having 12 lawyers, pagod na pagod tayo, especially when the media started doing interviews as well. I mean, having to take care of the legal side and then also answer questions of the public. Parang kulang pa tayo nun sa 12, no? We were really understaffed. And when you mentioned that they came from just one law firm, what is your observation? We all know in the Philippines, the legal community is small. So, what can we expect from this law firm, Fortune Narvasa? You're also a seasoned litigator and you also come from a big law firm. Na-encounter niyo po ba itong Fortune Narvasa law firm?
Yes, they're known as a litigation firm. And of course, the senior partners of that law office have had experiences in impeachment in the past. If you would recall, Attorney Fortune was one of the lawyers of the defense of President Estrada at the time. So this is not something new to them. So they're bringing in experience. And of course, they could bring it together with the team. So they could guide them. They could actually work together with them. And I think that's some sort of an advantage for them. If you recall, during our time, we're different lawyers. We have different experiences. Although our experiences were a bit long. But again, there was a time for us to get to know each other, to adjust, right? And probably that could work to their advantage also because they already know each other.
And in your experience as a defense lawyer for an impeachment trial, what was one of the biggest challenges that you encountered at that time that might help in terms of siguro yung tip natin dito sa defense team na that's something they can look out for?
Yes, thank you for that. First is that, of course, there are a number of articles, correct? And of course, some of us were assigned particular articles. I think I was assigned to 2 or 3 articles, but it never reached that point because on the 3rd article, the prosecution already ended it. And as you know, realities of a team is that we were taken from different groups. Well, some of us, we don't know each other. There's a period of adjustment. There are those who have strong personalities. There are those who are just quiet. Unlike this, I think they have been working together for quite some time. Although that was not a disadvantage for us. We learned how to work together. We were able to adjust immediately. But I think if we're talking of advantage, they've worked together for some time and they could immediately read each other's reaction. They could probably lay down the theory easier. And the hierarchy was clear. I think the hierarchy there is clear. Who is the most senior? Who is the second level? Who will screen it? Who will prepare the initial draft? Because if all of them are senior lawyers, who among them will prepare? Of course, the assistant of the senior lawyer will have to prepare, and then will be given to the senior lawyer and will be brought up to the rest of the team.
Well, in our case, sa defense team natin, very clear sa hierarchy na ang pinakamataas was retired Justice Cuevas, Serafin Cuevas.
Correct.
But I guess tama ka, with the rest, it just went
tayo
into...
eh.
Oh, like we just started adjusting lang na sino ba yung susunod na pinaka-senior, no? Parang, it was really very different. Whereas in this case, you're right, this is all coming from one law firm.
Yeah.
So they already have a very clear hierarchy and they have their own, already yung dynamic, no? When working together. And what can you say about the prosecution this time having a spokesperson that's different from their legal team? Because last time, diba, the spokespersons were members of Congress.
Yes.
For the prosecution. But this time, kakalabas lang din yesterday, si Attorney Odie Bucol, who's from a different, he's not part of Congress, pero siya ang official spokesperson ng prosecution team.
I think they studied that because based on our experience, if you would recall the Corona experience, they were members of Congress and therefore they're expected to position themselves in a manner consistent with the rest of the prosecution team. But here, I think what they would want to project is a spokesperson who will inform, a spokesperson who will speak for the interest of the public. Now, kindly take note that if you had a chance to listen to his interview, I had a chance to listen to his interview, he kept on saying, para sa bayan. That was a very clear message. So what he was trying, it's not, hindi ako bayad, pero para sa bayan. So that's a subliminal, a quiet message that you bring to the public. You are part of this. Come out, listen, support us. That is a very simple and quiet message.
Okay, so it was, you think, a good strategy to
I
have
think it was
someone
a
that's not part of
strategic move.
Congress?
Yes, I think that was a strategic move for them because they could always, the spokesperson could always distance himself with Congress. Ay ako po ay naatasan lamang, gusto ko pong tumulong at ito po ay paliliwanag ko lamang. He could easily distance. And at the same time, he is not a politician. He could say, well, that's their decision. So I think that's a strategic move.
Well, another new development that wasn't present in the past impeachment trials is a spokesperson, this time for the Senate Impeachment Court. So, meron na tayong 3 sets of spokespersons. What can you say about that? Do you think that's also a correct strategy?
Well, to my mind, the Senate would also want to ease the pressure on from their end, because remember, it has always been the Speaker of the Senate President has been speaking, and to some extent, he has been attacked, right? If you would notice, a lot of his statements have been actually broken down into pieces, given reasons, and there were motivations for his actions. Motivations were given for his actions. So I think what they would want to do is to, at this point in time, at least insulate the Senate as an institution. Because under the rules of impeachment, they will have to observe political neutrality. So palagay ko, after yung huli nilang, this decision-making, voting, and all of those events that happened on the floor, na realize na distance muna tayo dito. Pabayaan natin si attorney muna, ang spokesperson natin, magpaliwanag, step by step lang naman ito. Hindi ito kailangan, it would not require so much of discretion. He will just explain what is actually happening on the ground.
And during the trial of former Chief Justice Corona, the prosecution dropped the other articles of impeachment. Kasi nga naman napakadaming articles of impeachment at that time. But even then, when they still decided to drop the other articles of impeachment, that trial lasted for almost half a year until end of May. So, do you think itong articles of impeachment na ngayon, matatapos din kaya ito? Or what's your forecast as to how this will play out and how long this impeachment trial will last? Kung tapusin nila lahat ng articles of impeachment.
Nila to, I understand there are around 7 articles of impeachment. If they would really go through with this would last more than 5 months or 6 months. That's how I would see it. But again, a lot of these things that are happening would depend on how the people react to the situation. If you recall, in the past, it's a race to the mind of the people. It's really forming an impression in the mind of the people. And therefore, if the prosecution, to my mind, is convinced that they're ready for a judgment, even if 2, 3 articles of impeachment, they will say, we're done, then you meet our charges. The 3 articles are 4, and then there will be judgment. So this is the prosecution is not prevented from just picking or identifying or stopping at that point in time on the charges or the articles that they would want to prove based on experience from Corona's impeachment.
And how important is it to have a Senate President as the presiding officer of the impeachment court to be also a lawyer? Because in the past we had Senator Juan Ponce Enrile, who was also a lawyer, who presided over the impeachment trial of Chief Justice Corona. And right now we have Senate President Chis Escudero, who's also a lawyer. But there have been rumors of a possible change in the Senate President. Kung ang pumalit po hindi lawyer, anong opinion mo? Is that going to be a challenge or kaya ba yan?
Well, kung sanay sa parliamentary rules, why not? Kaya lang, resolution of objections, legal objections is different. Let's say, for example, you say it's a misleading statement, it's a conclusion of fact, it's a conclusion of law, it's a compound question, it draws a conclusion, that requires an opinion of an expert. Medyo mabigat yun. Kasi pinag-aaralan talaga sa batas, sa law school yung batas o yung rules of court pagdating sa evidence. So pagdating doon, medyo may advantage yung Of course, may advantage yung abogado na Senate President. If you would recall, nung kay President Estrada, it was the Chief Justice because it is the President who is at trial. You follow? Dito naman, in Corona, it was by chance, the Senate President was Senate President Enrile. Here, we will have to know by the 20th Congress who will be the Senate President. If by chance he is not a lawyer, then I think the rest of them will have to support him. Or probably I would expect that there will be a legal team behind whoever is the Senate President.
And finally, since you were also a spokesperson for the defense team, pinanggalingan mo naman. I remember kasama kita lagi sa mga media briefings as my also kasama na spokesperson. But what is your advice to all the spokespersons of this impeachment trial? Now we have 3 sets. Meron tayo for the prosecution, for the defense, magkakaroon din malamang sila, and then this time meron din for the impeachment court.
Well, you just have to listen to the questions and be ready that if they are not able to draw the answers they like from you, they will paraphrase the question. And you should be able to, at least to my mind, tayo noon, if you would recall, our objective is just like to inform the public. In fact, if you would recall, we don't have notes. We just listen to the proceedings. And as it happens, we tell them. We were not actually required to say particular things. If you remember, we just explained what we thought was right and what we felt was right.
I love that point of yours kasi nga wala naman tayong staff. If you remember, wala tayong funding, wala tayong staff. So, wala man lang nagbibigay ng briefing notes sa atin. So, pagka umaga, kanya-kanya tayo, tatanungin tayo sa media.
Kailangan manood. Yes.
Tapos, I remember pag nagkita tayo sa trial, lahat tayo, grabe, pero iba-iba yung mga nag-interview sa atin. But, pare-pareho naman tayo ng sinabi. Kahit hindi tayo nag-usap that day before or even that morning. So, tama ka, that's a good advice. That just follow based on the merits and then speak from those facts. So?
Yes.
Thank you so much, Attorney Tranquil Salvador.
Okay,
Asahan niyo po na interviewin ka namin as this impeachment trial unfolds. So we hope to have you here in the studio.
Thank you, Attorney Karen. Good morning.
2 lawyers, 2 perspectives, and 1 impeachment crisis that continues to test the nation's constitutional resolve. As the debates continue, the legal and political battleground grows sharper by the day. The road ahead is bound to shape not only the fate of one leader, but the future of democratic chaos and balances. Be timely informed, be insightful of the news. Always stay at the forefront. Join us again tomorrow for insights on the implications of the Israel-Iran war. This is Attorney Karen Jimeno. Thank you for spending your hour with us.